So from this lecture onwards, let's go ahead and let's start styling our to-do list application. So in order to style up our application, first of all, let's get rid of the components and modules which we have created in the previous lecture. So let's delete the inline component, outline component along with their modules from here, so that we do not have any confusion. And also in app.jsx, let's get rid of those components as well. And let's also remove the comment from here for the to-do component. All right, so if I go back here, I should not have any kind of errors here. All right, so after this, let's also get rid of the imports which we have over here at the top as well, or else you're going to have some errors. So let's delete the imports for those two components. And now if I go back here, now you should have this regular form right here. All right, so first of all, what we will do here is that we will create a header over here for our to-do list application. And for creating a header, we will be creating a brand new component. So let's create a new component by going inside the components folder, create a new file and call this thing as header.jsx. So this component is simply going to contain the site header. So I'll say export default, that's going to be function header, and make this thing return a simple div. So here I'll return a div which would say something like my to-do list. All right, so now if I want to add this header before the form which I have, I could go back to the app.jsx and I could include that header component here. So I could say header, make sure that you import header over here and not headers. Once it's properly imported, if you go back, now it has this header which says my to-do list. Now let's say if I want to style this particular header. So we all know that we have to use the CSS modules in order to style our components. So I'll create a CSS module for this header.jsx. So let's create a new file called as the header.module.css. So whenever you have to create a CSS module, you type in the component name .module.css. And here is where we will define a header class. So I would say .header, and we will write some CSS properties in there. Now, once we have written those CSS properties, we then have to connect this header component with that particular header class. So that means over here, I have to first import that header module. So I would say import these styles from the module which we have just created. So which is .header.module.css. And now once you have that particular styles, you could now add a class here. So class name is going to be styles.header. All right. So now if I go back here, no styling is yet applied to this. So this won't show any changes. And now if I want to add some styling, I could add those styles up over here. So let's say, first of all, let's change the background color of this thing to something like yellow. So I would say background color, and I'll use a color code here, which is F7CA18. If I save this and if I go back here, now as you can see, that background color is applied to that particular header. Now after this, let's say I want to place this text to the center. So over here, I could say text align to the center. If I do that, now the text will be aligned to the center as well. Now if I want to make the font of this thing to be a little bit bolder, I could also add a styling as font weight, and I will make it bold. So now it has the bold font. Now let's say we also want to increase the height of this one to 50 pixels. So I would say the height is going to be 50 pixels. So as you can see, this is what it looks like. And after that, let's also add some padding to this one. So the padding is going to be, let's say 10 pixels, so that it has space from all the sides. Now let's increase the font of this as well. So font size is going to be, let's say 2 EMs. So this is nothing but it's simply some regular CSS code which we have. Now as you can see, our navigation bar looks pretty much ready. But there's one simple problem with this, and that is if you take a look at this app, it actually has some padding from all the sides. So this navigation bar is not properly stuck to the top and the left corner right here, neither it's stuck to the top and the right corner over here either. So in order to solve this problem, you also have to add styling to your main application as well. So we know that in order to style the components, we have to create a CSS module for that. But now the question is, how exactly would you go ahead and add a CSS styling to the entire body? So in order to resolve this gap issues, you actually have to apply CSS styling to your actual entire app. So your app is this app.jsx, and what you have to do is you have to add some styling to this. So over here inside the source folder, you could directly create a brand new file which is called as app.css. So let me create that file here. So I'll create a file called as app.css. And you could also create other file over here as well within the folder itself and then import it over here as well. But to keep things simple, I'll directly add that file near to this app.jsx. And over here, I would use the body tag and I would set the margin on each side to 0. So margin is going to be 0 because we want margin from all the sides to be 0. So once we have created the style sheet, now I have to apply this to the entire app. Therefore, I'll import the style sheet in app.jsx. So over here, I would say, all right, import the file which is / which is going to be app.css. So if I save this, now as you can see, the styling over here will be applied. Now, whatever styling which you define in this app.css will be applied globally across all the components, because ultimately app.jsx is the component which contains all of your other components. That means whatever styling which you define in the app.css will be applied to the rest of the components as well. Now let's say I want to change the font of this one. So instead of changing the font of just a single component, it's actually better if we change the font of the entire application. So over here, I could go inside the app.css and set the font family to, let's say, sans serif. If I do that, now that will be applied to the entire page, and you'll also be able to notice the font of the navigation bar changed. All right, so after this, let's say you also want to finally apply some shadow to this particular navbar. So you could do that as well. So over here, I could say box shadow, and you could say 0 pixels, 4 pixels, 6 pixels. So we are defining the shadow width for all the sides. Then let's define a color in the RGBA format. So RGBA is going to be 00, and then the opacity is going to be 0.2. So as you can see, now we have a little bit of shadow over here at the bottom for this particular header. So here we have styled our very first component in our to-do list application, which is this particular navbar. So in the next lecture, let's go ahead and let's style up this component as well using CSS modules. So let's learn how exactly we could do that in the next one.